Creating text in Illustrator. There's two basic types of text that you create in Illustrator. One of them is known as point text, and the other is known as area text. And we'll look at how you create these. We'll start with the point text. The text tool right here is one of those tools that if you hold it down you can see that you have about 6 different options in here. It's like a lot like the pen tool, and that very often it's smart enough to figure out that you're trying to use one of these other ones. So we'll go over the other options a little bit later on as it's appropriate. But point text tool is, or point text is the easiest. You just simply click, and I'm going to change the size of the font here a little bit bigger so it's easy for you to see. But you just start typing away. You can hit the space bar to put spaces in there, but it just keeps on going in a straight line. So let me Apple Command Z to get rid of that. You can type away and hit the return key to start on a new line, but it's not friendly for doing a paragraph, because if you change, say you want to change the size of the paragraph, or think you are, you're actually squishing the text, which is a big no-no. Let me delete that. Whereas with the area type, go like that, and you can resize the. So there's an appropriate use for each one. And once you've created point text, it's very easy to edit it. So if I want to change this word to text, all I need to do is, with the same text tool, just swipe across the letter S and replace it with an X. So that's very easy to do. If I want to start typing another line of text, say down here, and I just click with the tool and start to type, it doesn't quite work like what you might think. So Command Z, Command Z. What you have to do is deselect this first, and as we've talked about earlier, best way to do that is just to hold down the Command key, which temporarily gives you the selection key. Just click anywhere other than on something, and now you're deselected, and now I can start to type again. Now, to see how this got its name of point text, what you can do is click on some of the different options, and we've talked about this before. This bar across here is like a contextual menu that changes based on what you're working with. So it gives you some of the basic options of working with text. We'll talk about some of the others, but right now notice that right over here there's this little point that starts at the left. With this clicked on, if I go up here and change it to right justified text, notice that it flops over to the right, but based on this point. And if I change it to center, that point ends up in the center. So that's what it's all about, is there's a point reference when you make this text in this style. So the other type of text that we deal with in here is area text. Area text, you still use just the first option of the type tool, but instead of clicking and getting the blinking cursor and typing away, you click and drag with the text tool. So just simply click, drag, and then when I start to type, I am confined into the area that I drew. So this is more appropriate for continuous text, because as you adjust this, the flow of the text changes to fit within the size area that you're giving it. Editing is very similar in that you would just take the text tool, and if you want to change something in here, you just drag across. You can just drag across one word. You can drag across a complete sentence. If I hit the delete key now, it deletes. Very friendly feature in here is if you happen to have just a regular selection tool, like let's say you wanted to move this, and you click inside of the text area with the selection tool, it automatically becomes the text tool. So that's pretty nice little shortcut. Now you have to, let's look at some of the differences between these two. So the big one is that we can resize this, and now if we want to resize this text itself, we want to make sure that we hold down the shift key, because if we don't, it'll allow us to do any kind of size squishing, changing that's really inappropriate to do with text. A lot of work goes into designing a good typeface, and to do that just destroys all of the beauty of it. So what you want to do is make sure that you hold down the shift key when you drag, and it keeps the text in uniform size. Make sure you release the mouse first, the shift key last, to constrain those proportions. Often when you're working with projects where you're just designing with type, you just have one letter, it's kind of hard sometimes to know if you maybe accidentally let your finger off the shift key before the mouse key, and you're really not sure whether you stretched it or not. So this is a very good thing to learn very quick on, and that is how to check if you did that. Notice by default, Illustrator doesn't give us any text options over here. We just get kind of the quick options up here, but as a designer, you'll definitely want to add these to your palette. So to do that, you go Window, you go Type, and then you go either character or paragraph. By default, they're housed together, so if you get one, you get both. And this palette opens up, and you're going to use it so often that you may as well just dock it right here so that it stays with the others. And so here we have the character palette, paragraph palette, and open type palette. So I'm going to click open the character palette. By default, it only gives us just a couple options, not a whole lot more than what's up here. But we can go to right here, little drop down, and we can click show options. And what's nice now is whatever we have selected, it gives us some more details on it. And the important one that I want you to look at is this right here, where horizontal scale, vertical scale. You 99.9% of the time are going to want those both to be 100%. So in the example I gave you before, if we accidentally shifted this in scale a little bit, by maybe letting go of the shift key too soon, we could select this, look here, and we'd see, oh yeah, indeed, one of these is not 100%, and then it's just as easy as going to the drop down and selecting 100%. Once they're both back to 100%, you know that you have the integrity of this letter form back. It's not always easy to know right away what type of text you're working with. Let me just show you an example here. So you know right now that I'm creating area text because I took the text tool and I stretched out an area to type within. But now I'm just going to go back to the selection tool. I'm going to select this, and I'm going to select this, and look how similar their selections look. The only difference is the point. And the point that I'm trying to make here is that with the bounding box on, they look very similar to each other. So just be aware of that when you're editing. You know, you should know right away that if you do that, all of a sudden it would want to allow you to let these flow, as opposed to, in this case, just destroying the integrity of the text. Now this is what's known as a bounding box, and if you don't like that, you can actually turn that off. You can go to view, and then there should be an option in here for bounding box, hide bounding box. There we go. So if I turn that off now, it doesn't show up on the point text, but it will still, well, it's not actually a bounding box, it's just the area of the type. So with that off, they look quite different. But unless you have a really good reason to, it really bothers you having that on, I work with it on most of the time. There are a few cases where it's good to get it out of the way. But anyway, so show bounding box. You can get a little bit similar to that by taking the direct selection tool and clicking on them, and then it's sort of like turning off the bounding box. There's a little menu item to help you work with area text. Select area text and go to type and area options. And what's nice about this is it tells you the exact width and height. You can actually work with multiple column work here. Now if you're doing a lot of this, it's not really the right program. You'd probably be more likely to do that in InDesign. But I could create multiple column work. Change this to 2 columns. I can change the gutter, which is the distance between the 2 columns. And I can click over here on preview and it'll show me what this will look like. Okay, and we'll probably look at this in a little more detail a little bit later on. The other way to type area text is to create an area first with one of the basic drawing tools. So it wouldn't really make sense to do it with a rectangle because that's exactly what this does, but you can do it with an ellipse, for example. So in this case, I'll make a perfect circle by holding down the Shift tool. And now you notice that in here there is an option for the area type tool. But watch this, I'm just going to stick with the regular type tool. I'm going to click over here on the edge. And as soon as I do that, this circle turns into an area type anyway. So really no use changing the tool when the program has become this smart. I'm going to make the type size, well let me use the more professional preferred method here, change it to a little bit smaller so that I can actually fit a few nonsense words in here, and you'll see that what happens is it follows the, and man I can type fast, it follows the contour of the circle. And if I select all this and change its size up, it's obviously going to change how it fits in there. When you convert a shape into an area text, it doesn't matter what color it is, if it has a stroke and a fill on it. So if I create a red star here, as soon as I click on it and it converts over, that's the end of the story there for the stroke and the fill. It is now just strictly text. So in the next movie, we'll talk more about the options here that we have inside of the character and the paragraph panels and how you can do a lot of little edits within the text, clean them up, and so on.